Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Mark Speeter. As the first American Pope, Leo XIV is now most probably the most famous American Catholic in history. And in taking this title, he likely replaces soon-to-be Blessed Fulton J Sheen. It's a blessed irony that the cause of our once best-known Catholic may well have been picked up and advanced by our now new best-known Catholic. Paul Kengor joins us with more. Paul is a friend. He is a professor at Grove City College, and he joins us to talk about what Pope Leo means for Fulton Sheen. Paul, great to speak with you. How are you?
Good, Marcus. Thanks for having me on.
Always a joy to reconnect with you. So,
thanks.
I think I want to begin by asking you to share with us about the biography of Pope Leo that you've been working on.
Yeah. So I completed it last fall, and it's a major work on Pope Leo. It's over 400 pages. So, some people can relate to this, 120,000 words. So it's a deep dive into his background, the first year of his papacy, and it's interesting, given our conversation here right now on Fulton Sheen, that I actually closed the book with what I called an addendum, a postscript, and it said I think I titled it a very American postscript. So speaking kind of to international readers of the book. And it just occurred to me in finishing the book that the best known American Catholic has always been Fulton Sheen. And, we Sheen fans like that, the fact that he's, our guy. And it occurred to me in finishing the book on Pope Leo that, the greatest known American Catholic in history will unquestionably be Robert Francis Prevost, because he's the first American Pontiff. And I remember having a strange feeling, Marcus. I thought, this kind of saddens me, right? And then I thought, well, why? Is this a competition? It's really not. And Fulton Sheen would have done cartwheels if he knew that there'd be an American Pope within 40 to 50 years of his death. But that's unquestionably the situation, and he's never as popular as Sheen was, and Sheen had a megaphone with his TV show and his radio shows. That doesn't compare to the kind of platform that the American Pontiff is now going to have. Robert Francis Prevost as Pope Leo XIV.
It's amazing, really, because as prophetic as Sheen was, I don't think he could have foresaw that we would have an American Pope. And I believe that signals a tremendous amount for the way the United States is, the way the world is right now, in the state of the church. I wonder if you have thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And so he died in 1979. And at that point, we're talking almost at this point 50 years ago. And I remember being interviewed about a year and a half ago after the death of Pope Francis. He died in April 2025. And people asking, they would ask us, you've got these questions too, right? Who are the papabile? Who are the candidates most likely to be Pope? And every now and then somebody almost on a lark would say something like, any Americans that you think are candidates? And we'd be like, oh, no. I mean, come on, that's preposterous. I mean, there's just never going to be an American Pope. No way. And if you looked at some lists, like Edward Penton had a really good list of a couple dozen, at 20 to 30. It was his College of Cardinals report, I think it was. And he had 20 to 30 candidates, and you would actually see Prevost on that list near the bottom. But the actual Vegas betting odds, and they actually had Vegas betting odds on the next Pope, were so minuscule for Prevost that if you had put down $100, $1,000, you'd have been a rich man by May 8th, 2025, when he walked out onto the loggia. So Sheen would have been really surprised by this, I think, just as all of us are. But man, Sheen would have been thrilled about it.
I believe he would have been, and I believe he would have had a lot to say about the fact that we have the first American Pope. And before I go on to some thoughts I had on that particular reality, the both of them are from Illinois. I wonder if there's some kind of a prophetic signaling there, or is there something in the water in Illinois?
It's really fascinating. In fact, when I did my book, A Pope and a President, it was obviously on Ronald Reagan and John Paul II. And I had a lot on Fulton Sheen in that book. And a number of times people who read that book said, said they were really struck by the fact that the two greatest communicators of the 20th century, one at the presidential level, Ronald Reagan, he was known as the great communicator, and the other would be Fulton Sheen. Both hailed from these little tiny small towns in like northwestern Illinois, in the heartland. I've been to both of their hometowns. I've been to their places of birth, and these are little farm country, flat Illinois plains. And now you have the other person that's going to have a giant megaphone for communication of the Catholic faith, Robert Francis Prevost, and he comes from little Dalton, Illinois. So they're not coming out of New York. They're not coming out of Philadelphia, Boston, the Northeast. They're not coming out of L.A. or Hollywood, right? They're coming out of America's heartland of all things. And I think, it's quite. I think it's really quite fascinating. I don't know if the Lord is telling us something with that or not, but that's where they came from.
I believe he is. I'm not entirely sure exactly what. I've got a few ideas, but when Leo was first named Pope, the very next day a certain post went. There were a lot of posts went viral on social media of people who knew him growing up. One of which was, I played Little League with Robert Prevost, and I struck him out as a young batter. So is the wrath of God going to come after me now? Now, I cracked up, but I think what it also communicated for those of us who live in the West is that this is a pope who, he's like us, he ate the pizza we eat, he played baseball the way we do, and so in even the ordinary things we take for granted about being Catholics in the United States, this pope is acquainted with that. I really think God's trying to give us a wake-up call here. And I wonder if you can speak to that, just how much of a regular Joe he is in that sense.
Yeah, and he was such a regular Joe and kind of a quintessential American mid-20th century Catholic that, like so many of us, he watched Fulton Sheen on TV. And I talk in my book and I talk in my article in the National Catholic Register about this couple that came to Rome just a couple months after the installation of Pope Leo XIV. And they actually, how beautiful is this, Marcus? They met at St. Mary's of the Immaculate Conception Church in Peoria, Illinois, which was where Fulton Sheen was an altar boy. And it's where Fulton Sheen's remains are today. And Austin and Kristen Savage are the names, and they had just been married, and they go up and they talk to Leo XIV, and she said, I'd like to talk to you about Fulton Sheen. So we met at his church, and we have kind of a special devotion to him. And Leo XIV said, oh yeah, I grew up watching Sheen on TV. And at that moment, this young girl, this newlywed, said, we'd really like to see him beatified. Wink, wink to the Pope, right? And he said something like, well, remember this. I'll take this to heart. And I remember reading that at the time, the National Catholic Register, and I thought, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. That's a cool story. Well, Sheen's beatification had hit a wall in 2019, kind of inexplicably. I think it was July of 2019. Pope Francis had approved the miracle for his beatification, and then it was supposed to happen in December. I think December 21st, 2019, and then all of a sudden, boom! It suddenly hit this roadblock with the Bishop of Rochester and files that were sealed. Everybody said, "What's going on? What's going on?" With nothing, no movement, nothing whatsoever. And then 5-6 months after that conversation that Leo had with those two, January 2026, we suddenly get a statement from the Vatican about the process for Sheen's beatification is up again and rolling, and we now have a date. It's going to be in Peoria in September. So I think that, I don't know much more beyond this. I haven't talked to the Pope about it, but it had to have been an influence, you would think, of a quiet influence of Leo XIV.
I wouldn't be surprised. As usual, Paul, thank you very much for your time and for offering your wisdom.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
My guest has been Dr. Paul Kengor. He is Professor of Political Science at Grove City College, and he's been commenting on how Pope Leo XIV might have had an influence on the canonization eventual of Fulton Sheen.